Young man, do you want to succeed, to expand beyond your horizons? If you want to be free, then you must learn to master yourself, your thoughts, feelings, your body and spirit. Master your subjective consciousness. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. The world outside of yourself is ruled by those who are not ruled by their base instincts. Young man, go forth into the world after this. Meditate, contemplate, then plan and execute an action towards success. Take a risk, break the rules, and be disciplined within self.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what draws behind the curtain, the face of evil's lurking, with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Interesting. Quite pertinent, quite apropos to the topic was that second verse of that song. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, conditions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to talk about something which is of great concern to us. Personal concern, a concern in terms of, I think we're talking about morality. And morality is difficult to talk about because it is kind of like status. It invites a lot of signaling, okay? It is very much in that FE space. It is very much a question of, am I supposed to say the right thing? And then I guess it's this kind of infinite recursion that goes on as to, but it is a difficult thing to speak about, is it not? Even not just because of the social implications, Dr. Polymath.
Is it difficult to speak of, or is the consequences of the speaking of that is difficult to bear?
The muddy waters is what I'm talking about. The muddy waters, the volumes of crap that has been written by people whom signal this and that, and the culture which says, oh, my son said that he's taken on this job because he wants to talk to people and he just finds it so nice that, oh my God, isn't he such a good boy because he wants to, in other words, in that case, morality is now just being tied with wanting to be around people is good, or people signal that kind of stuff.
There's this YouTuber, I forgot his name, but he used to make videos about like software engineering. These days, he kind of makes sub stories and anti CEO videos. I forgot his name. I think I'll remember it at some point. The point is, he made a recent video whereby a CEO fired 900 employees, saying that they needed to, reduce the cost, all that stuff. Now, the interesting thing is, he said that there was like recruiters who kind of found these 900 employees, trying to find them a job, and then he kept stipulating, saying, "It's not as if these, recruiters, by my COVID, it's not as if these recruiters actually care about helping these guys get a job. It's that they want to make money off them." And I was thinking, but yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. As in his mind, there's something wrong with people having self-interest, and he thinks that's immoral. Yet that is the truth about everything: is that we all have self-interest. But to him, these sort of people, they've encapsulated the idea that if you do an action primarily for self-service, it is somehow wrong. That somehow you have to lie to yourself and create this narrative that you're doing it to help others, even though there's a monetary exchange in it, especially if it's a lot of monetary exchange. It's quite
So
interesting.
one can say there's a projection going on there in the sense that these people, when they do things for self-interest, are quite callous about it, right? Like the people whom think, oh, self-interest is a bad thing, are people whom are not conscientious people. They don't. They're rather wicked in their hearts with regards to, and perhaps they're not competent either, because
Yeah.
when you do things for self-interest and you're competent and you're conscientious and you know you I don't even like to use the word fair, but fairness is an outgrowth of operating in this manner, which I described, the good way. And the people who don't operate that way are always thinking like, oh my God, we cannot let anybody operate out of self-interest because they're going to be doing that bad thing, which I do. Because the other way to look at it is some kind of a consequentialist way, which they're saying that, acting out of self-interest, even though not necessarily, but more likely, in other words, statistically, is going to lead to bad outcomes. And it's just like, that's obviously not true. It is at least uh, people acting out of grouping together, okay,
Uh-huh.
is way more dangerous. Okay. Now, I'm willing to go 50-50 that yes, self interested people do bad things. But when people mob up together for that whole my family and my cousin, and oh, I want to feel like this, or let me rail against the CEO class, let me rail against that other class, that other group, this other thing, that's just, now, pardon my, I'm obviously more disgusted by that, okay? But my disgust aside, this also leads from a consequentialist point of view to just as much bad crap out there, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I found his name is Joshua Fluke. And the funny thing is, this guy, I think he was sort of in the situation, the bad family circumstance. His dad was doing drugs, stealing money from him. So I think in his mind, he's already has this idea that when people do things for themselves, it's going to turn that bad. Or him having to kind of lock his family out. The issue is, doesn't understand is that he's making money from us watching his video on YouTube. I'm not so sure he understands that he's not helping us. He's creating content for entertainment purposes so that he can pay his rent. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I am sure he is not self aware to just accept that reality there. So I get your point about the muddy waters and going through it and what all that means.
Good. And we're going to muddy the waters even more because we're going to talk about things. And maybe we're not muddying the waters by bringing these stark images of, let's say, a drug dealer, right? We got our man there, Heisenberg. And then we have a pretty woman, two pieces of cinema out there. And we're going to talk
Is
about
cinema or sin? Enigma.
sin and the enemas, and oh my God.
Yeah.
Uh, Not bad this time. Not bad this time. Usually you're quite cringe and lame with your jokes.
I'm a lame. What am I supposed to do but be myself? Isn't that what everyone says? Be yourself. And then when you are, they criticize you. So
So yes, we're gonna look, and ladies and gentlemen, this is a, shall we say, extemporaneous conversation, free flowing, impromptu, to talk about this topic, which perhaps we have shown our hands in the beginning of by saying that, look, we don't really think that morality is about, what you think about people. you know, Now, in the sense in which we just said, this kind of a, if I care, therefore it's good. It's like, dude, the mama bear tearing you apart cares about something. That's why she's tearing you apart. And that behavior is seen all through human beings too. Human beings are tearing each other apart because they care about their cousin, their aunt, their this, because we're filled with misunderstanding, error, false certainties. So simply caring, and there is no way to rectify the misunderstanding, the false certainties, and so on and so forth, right? It's not like, okay, caring is the right way, but we could just we could just give people the right knowledge, and then they will care about the right things, and then they will act in the right way. It's like, no, people will be tearing each other apart because of stuff that they care about, because of the other people within their groups that they care about. So to just say, oh, group feeling and oh, my brother and all that crap, pardon my disgust, okay? But it is insane, and that's not where morality lies necessarily. Now, morality is about life in the sense that we don't talk about morality when we talk about rocks, right? We don't necessarily use that word morality. One may go to truth, one may go to things like logos and raise it up to the level of God, and then it includes everything. But when you just talk about typical ethics, you're talking about things that are alive and the life that we care about. Okay, maybe not ants, but maybe your pets. Okay, and then maybe other people and how we ought to relate and how we ought to live. Just because the subject matter involves life doesn't mean that caring about, that sappy little thing that people say care is going to create the outcomes that you want, because as a matter of fact it tends to create the opposite. Now, having shown our hands in that regard, we're going to go into the streetwalker thing. Where would you like to start? What questions perhaps could we put on the table in order to continue to explore this here?
I have the table.
No, that one was not bad. I think you redeemed yourself quite a bit there. That's a good one. That's a good
Okay, so we can go by demarcating the difference between people who think that they're the table versus those who go out there and work on the table. So, the difference is those who work on the table are the street hookers and, escorts, etc. So let's start demarcating. Morality. Is it wrong to the individual and or society, or in the individual internally or externally, for them to go and sell their peace leave?
Okay.
And why? Is it right or wrong to sell peace leave? Is it
Okay.
wrong to sell it for a small amount of money? So is the quantity important? Because we can all agree that if you sold it for like 1 billion, most people wouldn't consider you even an escort. They'll just think you're a good businessman or businesswoman in this case.
Okay. So in this particular regard, okay, because I like that you at least put some markers on the table, because that is part of the problem is the sense that people don't talk about the markers that they're putting on the table. So you say with regards to the individual soul, for example, and so on and so on, is it bad? So I would say yes, and within this context, okay? The context is
Watch out, Abba
there
Preacher's gonna come for you if you contradict
there
yourself in
are
the future. So,
there are oh no, I be tricking. It's well known that I go around tricking in these streets or whatever. Well, who gives a crap about whether or not I can contradict myself or whatever the hell people think? Go to hell, Abba and preach. um the point is this: there is a societally agreed upon way to sell your peace leaf, right?
like getting married or
Yeah,
that's it.
because again, let's not be silly, okay? There is a societally agreed upon way to sell your peace leaf, and Also, that thing, that way affects the way in which you feel accepted by others and feel whole and part of the fabric of society, feel like a respectable person, right?
Hmm.
So if you are very eccentric, and by definition, it can be a small percentage of people. If you're a total eccentric person, right, then from the point of view of the your individual soul, it's not going to cause you much perturbation to sell your peace leave in the wrong way, because who the hell, what the hell do they know about the wrong way, the right way, right? But there's going to be an exchange. We're talking about the social fabric. We're talking about exchange, and there is a right way to do this exchange, to do this dance, to do this ethical play, right? And then there are ways which are outside of that, and this affects the individual soul to the degree to which they're not completely eccentric. And if we're talking about morality, we have to talk and legislate for the majority. Is the beginnings of the answer to your question, sir. My answer is that yes, it is wrong in that context. How do we muddy the waters even more?
Okay. So if that was a real question, yeah, pardon my COVID, guys. Yeah, so it's
You're
an
gonna get us
interesting
flagged with all this mentioning of the C word.
the
Go
C
ahead.
word. Yeah, give unto Caesar what is unto Caesar. So if you guys want to give me a super chat, go ahead. Anyways, that was a bad one. But I think if you want to muddy the waters more, you could start arguing and saying, okay, so why is it wrong for these people to actually sell it in the uncouth way, meaning very transactional, very raw, and very direct? Why is that wrong? Is it because you're disturbing the hierarchy? Because there's a set of rules and structures that exist in hence marriage, which then if you start to participate in that, you're ruining it for the other women, because now you're changing the market, right? You're creating a product that is valued, which allows other women to get married, but now you're giving it for a cheaper price because then men can access it without having to invest in the full product. So societally, I can see why that would be immoral. Now the issue is the soul. Is it immoral for the soul, the individual herself, to sell peace leave without partaking in the societally agreed form of marriage?
You just asked the question again. You didn't necessarily answer it. I said that if you're completely eccentric, you're going to be eccentric anyways, and to the degree to which. So let me stop there now, because I've kind of just kind of said that you said disturbance of the order externally, right? When you come to the soul, is disturbance of the order the same yardstick that we're going to use?
Uh,
Internal
yeah, the order
disturbance.
to self, yes. Internal
Okay,
disturbance of self.
good. So generally speaking, yes. And shout out to Ramil, hoes are winning.
So funny.
he, he says he would say no, that what are you talking about, that this is what they want. He would say that the people, right, that he would say that we're out here doing that crazy mansplaining crap, saying that someone's soul is disordered. What is disorder to you? Okay, maybe exactly what is natural to them, right? This is a could and a maybe type of statement I'm making here, in the sense that is it not possible that chaos and the outcomes that we see out there, is what winning looks like? Okay, and that is, that is what winning is, and that is their natural state. Hence, it may not be. What it comes down to is, what is this ordered soul? Do we have to interrogate the individual to see what exactly they want? And how can we even trust that they know what they want? Speaking generally again, because people in general don't know themselves, right? So one has to almost take a paternalistic approach towards morality of this sort, because again, when speaking of the eccentric character that also knows themselves, they could say, yes, 100% I'm selling my peace leave in the uncouth way, and 100% I'm fine with it. There is no disturbance or perturbation in my soul. This is what I'm here to do, right? But what are we talking about? 1% of the population? So for the majority, though, there's going to be disturbance, but I would say that we have to take it one step out of the internal, and it has to be almost a consequentialist thing and a feedback. We have to have that feedback loop of, okay, they caused a disturbance to the order. Okay, the order is now maybe there's less marriages out there as a result, and we know because human beings have evolved to be raised in a particular way, mother, father, so on and so forth. We have other disturbances that are occurring. People feel bad about it. Okay, so there's a loop going on in there. But to trust that somebody knows what is orderly in their soul is going a little bit too far for the average person. I don't think that people will ever have order, even if they're following the moral strictures, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good point there. And the thing is, obviously, we can't know which ones are truly self-fulfilled in their ventures. I mean, you can kind of see markers. Is their life functioning? Do they, seem relatively mentally well? And the thing is, you can't even use these markers as an absolute, because even if someone is mentally ill, it could be perhaps if they had lived a normal life, they would have been worse. So there's always that play of the unknown as well that's kind of inculcated in all this. I think ultimately, I am a person that believes in consent. As long as the person decides to will themselves as they wish, I think that morally speaking, A, let them do it. B, it's better that you let them do it so that they discover what they do and do not like, rather than trying to protect them from it all and then they end up being resentful of certain things. So in this case, I think that the person that sells peace leave, it really does determine on themselves. But I will say that obviously culture, how they're raised, the societal pressures that tell them that something is wrong all these years programs them. So then, therefore, obviously, they believe that it's wrong. And it's that belief of the wrongness that ends up messing them up. If they were raised in a more neutral sense, where it's not seen as such a big deal to give peace leave away, especially for monetary value, then obviously they wouldn't be beaten up internally as they are. Society has a big impact into how they see themselves and their value, since most people are inculcated into a particular narrative. As you made a video on Storyville.
So one approach is to look at the genealogy of these things, how they come to be, the emerging of these orders, if you will. Because when you stand back and you look at it, it may seem static and it may seem a little immalleable, unworkable. You don't understand. There is an order that says X, Y, and Z. But let's talk about the genealogy of sexual morality. Is there anything that we know about the genealogy of sexual morality? Is there anything that we know about how this has come to be? There's this book called Sex has Dawned. It's been widely discredited now. That talks about, well, in back in the day, if you have a roving band of 20 people and nobody knew who the child's father was, no one needed to know, everyone was going to take care of everyone else anyways, so on and so forth. The bonobos are out there doing what they do and they're all chill and relaxed and everyone is having sex with everybody. What are and again, that book was kind of discredited in certain sense. And shout out to our friend Mr. Weinstein, the simp one, not the bully one. What's his name? Brett. Shout out to Brett and Heather Hine. They really push back against that concept. They're like, no, 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 no. The concept of monogamy or shall we say, this kind of pair bonding, if you will, is strong in the gene pool of human beings or something like that.
Yeah,
But
but you could argue that it
yeah,
became strong, right? So I'm not sure what the issue is,
there's
because obviously
there,
at
there
some
is
point,
always a becoming, but what I mean is at what point, and you get what I'm saying. The
right?
genealogy here, how did it come to be? What can you say about that?
Okay, so you know what? Even if that, okay, so even if that book has been discredited by some people, if you go to
Hmm.
Africa, especially Nigeria, 10% of Nigerian men are born with fathers who aren't actually their fathers. So I'm not so sure how how wrong this book is, when that's the reality of many countries, especially where development of checking for DNA etc isn't that high. Of course, it makes sense that a woman would be having monkey double backflips with several men, who is high value in her mindset, in a physical, domineering sense, and then get married to the one that she feels will protect her. And the evidence is there. In some countries, in Africa and parts of Asia, men, children who think that their father is their father, and they're wrong, it's about 10% of them. So I'm not so sure how wrong or discredited this book is, when evidence seems to suggest that that is where we came from.
Good, exactly. So the facts of the matter are such. Whence comes then, again, back to the question, this other thing? In other words, one could say, okay, because I gave a particular story. I said, if you have a certain number, and it seems to be that it's got to be a nomadic thing, because
Hmm.
once you settle down and start doing
Hmm.
agriculture,
Hmm.
things change. And
Yep.
then you need property. And then you need
Hmm.
to know whom you're going to pass your property
Hmm.
down to,
Hmm.
XYZ. But that seems a little bit
I
too
mean,
just so story evolutionary kind of
not
BS.
necessarily.
It's too
Let me add
simple. Oh,
something.
go ahead.
So, if you notice, some nomadic cultures like Somalis, Egyptians, Sudanese, Maasai in Kenya, Arabians, a lot of Arab, Bedouin tribes. Guess what? What do you think they practice? They practice a female version of circumcision. Why do you think they do that? These are nomads in the ancient historical context. They're more nomadic than some of the other tribes like in Europe and Africa, which are more sedentary, like they form farms, etc. Why do you think they practice female version of circumcision? Is to prevent the women from sleeping with guys when they're 15, 14, 16, so that actually the genealogy can be protected, so that they're not sexually active. Therefore, the child is going to be most likely the person who they marry, because they won't be feeling the need to go out there and sleep. And also, in some forms of these circumcision, they close certain holes so that they can't literally have monkey double backflips until they're married. So this is where the logic of FGM comes in. Again, I'm not justifying it. This is nothing to do with that. That's a whole another immoral circumstance, but it has a logic behind it. So
Okay, and in you've laid one thing on the table, and perhaps we'll refer to it as we go on, and that's the consent thing. The
mhm.
consent thing, which kind of assumes a certain kind of agency thing, which, by the way, assumes a free will thing, which I don't think you believe in, but uh, we
Free
might
will.
get
What's
there.
that? Free will.
Okay, we might,
It's
we
expensive.
might.
Expensive will.
It's free,
You
yeah,
better pay for everything.
you gotta pay for the will. Now, it seems that there is a. Let me ask you this question. Let me ask the nomads this question. What is wrong with raising another man's child? And I'm not asking that because you feel like it's wrong. Who gives a crap what you feel, right? Like this is not the
Everything.
point. Go ahead and tell
Genealogy.
me
Okay.
what is wrong with it. If again we are in
Genealogical.
that group of 20 people who perhaps didn't care, okay, and then at some point you start caring, now you have the sexual jealousy thing, which is part of your, the way your hormones are flowing, but I don't care about any of that, and I want to ask you what is wrong with raising another man's seed.
Everything. So obviously, traits such as hair color, physical dominance, height, skin tone, personality, all these things are hereditary aspects, meaning they can be passed down, and you can see trends in families. So if I'm a guy, ideally, I want to give birth, or I want my wife to give birth to a son with my qualities. I want someone who is XYZ, intelligent, I can communicate, personality traits and quirks that is similar to mine so that we can build something. Basic connection aspects in there, ingrained. I don't want a kid who is going to be just sitting there looking like some useless person that I can't engage in a polymathic sense, right? I want a polymath, ideally. Now, if I have some,
Yeah, yeah,
if my wife had some useless guy, some Brad, it's like, yo man, let's do some football, woo. I'm not really gonna be feeling very connected to that kid. So there's the main thing that our bodies want is to procreate, leave our genes on for the next generation, so that we can continue, we can survive forever. Humans are immortal because we can leave behind our genes to propagate. So I want to be sure that my genes are the ones propagating. When you're raising another man's child, it becomes apparent at some point that that's just not your child.
yeah.
Statistically,
So you
across
went
time, obviously.
teleological with it, that this is what it wants, the gene. It wants to do that. After all, what else? If we take that away, then what else are we talking about? Because when you were saying, "Oh, you care about the hair," and I was like, why does anyone care about any of this stuff? But then I realized, well, if you don't care about any of this stuff, then what's the point having any of these conversations, right? one one kind of has to care. So even if you abstract away all the individual logical carrying, there is the gene which wants to propagate itself. You want to propagate yourself. Hence, if you're not doing that successfully, then there's a problem. Which kind of I forget what the little hat people call it, but basically there's that kind of uh, and I believe in the Hausa language is called the Amajiri, or maybe that's the Fulanese. Basically, there's a kind of communal raising of children at a particular age, where they get sent off. And if somebody knows the thing with the Israel people,
Mm.
um, they can put it in the chat. There's that kind of in a sense, in other words, it's like, okay, you go out there, you do your thing. Some offspring is going to come out, and everyone is out there doing their thing. Offspring comes out, and it's getting people are getting communally raised anyways. But
Uh-huh.
you, beyond the just having the seed out there, you want to guide in your
Uh-huh.
way the seed, right? And its outcomes and blah blah blah. Because after all, we're human beings, and a lot needs to happen, for all through our lives, right? Not just even the first 18 years, right? So that's part of the equation as well, right? That you want to guide. In other words, you would be against that kind of a communal raising of children, would you?
Yeah, personally, yes. I will be against my kids being raised in a communal sense when I don't have much control over it. I'm not against other people doing it, obviously. You do you, boo boo. But for me personally, I would rather be able to be in control of where my kid or kids determine and get certain aspects, because I know someone else is going to raise them in a way that's not going to reach their full potential, statistically speaking, at least.
Okay, so now the streetwalker is balking against the order, and that then breaks things down all the way to what the gene wants. Is the story so far? Okay, now that story can
Mm.
be further analyzed, assailed, regaled against, and blah blah blah, right? And we can go back
Yeah.
down that road and see. But let's go to the other guy. Let's go to Heisenberg. Okay, because again, ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing here is we're talking about morality, and we went straight to real life concrete examples, right? Things that are kind of visceral, to take away all the fluff and the BS about people talking about their feelings. Okay. Oh, they didn't care about the people, and the CEOs don't care about it. Like, get the hell out of here. That's insane. Okay. It's a lot of projection going on. There's a too much projection going on with that. Caring leads to a lot of suffering as well. Okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't care, but it is silly to think that if we only just cared, it's like, dude, people are chopping each other's heads off because they care. Okay? Now, let's talk about, and again, okay, let me not keep repeating myself because I think we're quite intelligent in the chat. Are we not? So let's talk about Heisenberg. Okay? uh, and your co-fleet or DVAC 91 there slowly killing you in Nairobi. Hopefully you can come back to continue the conversation. But if we were to create this, let me. See, I asked you earlier to ask a question about the streetwalker. What questions can we ask about the drug dealer? Is he also just as bad from the point of view of his soul, from the point of view of also what's going on societally? And let me answer this. I think that the streetwalker is creating more of a disturbance to the order, however emergent the orders are, right?
Hmm.
Emergent versus non-emergent, all those kind of things. There's like it's like nature versus nurture. These things are these things are pointless dichotomies to go on about.
Versus.
Is it
Right.
cultural? Is it cultural? Is it biological? It's like, what are you talking about? It is. It is
Yeah, and
okay.
yeah, it's everything,
But
right?
everything's everything,
Yeah.
But for the sake of analysis, and that's you're right. It's not a versus thing, right? For the sake of analysis, we have to bring in nets of abstraction, right? Grids, and then just so that we can move parameters around. But the average person there gets confused, thinking that there's some kind of higher explanatory power. But anyways, let me take a step back and let's talk about Heisenberg. And I think that Heisenberg is not messing up any particularly great order. Because if you can sell me alcohol, right, which, in other words, the drug thing, okay, because if you go to Plato's Republic, in the very beginnings of Plato's Republic, what Plato begun to do was ask the question, begun to do what Socrates supposedly began to do, it was ask the question about, how to come up with this perfect society. At some point, he legislated the right the right foods, because we're getting into Heisenberg and we're getting into what you ingest, chemical things, and what the effects that they have on you. So right there, from him saying, look, there was a point beyond which he said, okay, this is when all the problem starts. Okay, he said, look, they can eat these grains, they can have this stuff, and then they can have this, maybe a little bit of this. And then somebody asked, well, how about these spices and these sweets? And he was like, okay, well, sure. And now we need to have doctors and lawyers too and everything else, right? Uh, Here's what I mean. If you're going to allow cake and alcohol, then look, you can allow other things as well. So the thing that Heisenberg is breaking, if Heisenberg was around, let's say, during Prohibition and it was alcohol, right, is more arbitrary. It is not so tied to any kind of biological order that's so deep, unless you want to be a Platonist in terms of your how strict you want your society to be and how perfect you want it to be, and say, hey, it's barley and water. Anything beyond that, now we're sliding into hell. I would say, to reiterate the point, that Heisenberg is not doing anything particularly bad, as bad as Mr. Or as a streetwalker. And then Heisenberg will have, or more people, you don't have to be super eccentric to sell alcohol, okay? And just because somebody else said, oh, you know what, this other thing here, let's say CBD oil, is still illegal in this state, therefore you're a bad person. I'm just like, it's easy for the average individual. You don't have to be very eccentric to be like, what are you talking about? The guy down the street is selling alcohol. That thing will kill you. My CBD oil is not going to kill you. Anyways, what do you think, or what questions can we ask, or what are your answers to the Heisenberg one? Juxtapose it, if you can, with the Streetwalker.
Yeah, so with Heisenberg, yeah, I think I would have to agree with you about 67%. And the reason why I say that is because with Heisenberg, he has reasons for why he's doing his thing as well. Obviously, everyone has reasons. That's not the point. The point is, what's his reasons and what are the impact on society? You mentioned alcohol earlier. One could argue that alcohol has already reached the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. Hence, you can't remove it because it will be impossible to remove it. To try to regulate something that like 60% of the population partake in, and try to remove it, especially if they're addicted to it, which most people are who do alcohol, addicted to it to a level where they need to drink it at least at some point, it's not going to be possible. So one could say that alcohol is legal because it is already inculcated itself within human culture and society, not because of the contradictions of it being a drug, but just simply because it's an ancient drug that cannot be made illegal. So one could argue in that case, then, you could perhaps compare it to cigarettes, something that is more recent, yet legal in most countries, and is very harmful in terms of carcinogenic effects, and how that is, in comparison to something like weed or coke or something else like that. I think if I juxtapose this with the streetwalker and I add on the aspect of consent, is that if someone consents to do something, right, let them do it as long as they're an adult. And I say an adult because, well, give a person a chance to discover other types of lives instead of putting them in the middle of something that might remove future choices from them. So let them at some age, that we deem acceptable, let's just say 18, since that's normal. Let them do what they want to do at that point. Give them enough of an understanding of the consequences. Now, is it worse than the other? I didn't quite answer that question. I think a drug dealer is creating more of it's affecting more lives directly, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were to use a quantification, you could say that if the effects are bad, he's going to be affecting far more people because, like engineering, which, you can kind of affect more people because you build a software that millions of people use with a drug. Let's say you either Heisenberg, who's developing the actual formula for that particular drug, affecting millions of people, or even the dealer who's affecting hundreds of people. They're affecting far more people than the streetwalker. However, the streetwalker is a symbol of no longer being part of the plantation. But yeah, so quantification wise, I would say that the drug dealer, if we are to say that what he's selling is bad, let's say meth, okay? Let's not, use coke or weed. Let's say something meth, right? You could argue that he's worse through that lens.
I see. Okay. I think our friend here said he had something quick to add. A point, perhaps.
Hey, what's happening?
What is up, sir? How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Hey, what's happening, Polymath? Thanks for obliging. So here's the quick point. And this is I think a sort of a Christian worldview issue. So there's a passage of scripture that suggests that we need to follow the laws of the land because there is no law of the land that is not, artifact byproduct downstream from God's law, as it were. And that principle works as long as you're not in a democracy where the people get to decide what the laws are, right? The laws they emanate from the throne, as it were. If you're in the king's rules go. But in a democracy where you get to vote and you get to put people in that will put the kind of laws that you want in, it significantly obscures this issue of things like, is methamphetamine evil, is alcohol evil? Well, alcohol is legal, so then the drug dealer is evil, but the folks that are selling us drugs, the pharmaceutical companies, they are good because they are following the laws. But wait a minute, the laws actually were voted on and put in place by the people, and or by, maybe an oligarchy that is actually controlling everything. So that creates an issue in certain parts of the world. For instance, prostitution is legal. So then, therefore, does that make it also good? So the mistake I think people make when they read that passage of scripture is they are suggesting that just because something is a law, that they are to be on the right side of it. Unfortunately, at one point in time, it was illegal to be a Christian. So that creates a problem there to overcome. Um, and yeah, so I just wanted to add that to the conversation. I think that's a nice muddy water for you to sort out.
That is a good one. That is a good one. The law, okay. And the first thing that came to mind when you said that was, downstream from God, and also, God's time is not your time, in the sense that just because you think that the laws right now by the king is not particularly great for you and your family, well, it's going somewhere, maybe in 100 years that is best. And what do you know? But then you mentioned you have this preference. You're the Platonist out here to talk crap about democracy, and which, I tend to agree with you in the sense, or at least to the degree to which we have democratic prejudices, which is because we are in a democracy, we have a democratic cave. Shout out to Plato again, and we have democratic prejudices. Then it does behoove us to look squarely at democracy and critique it, right? Because otherwise, it's the water we swim in, and we think it's all good, but nothing's all good. Everything is a, shall we say, trade off. Now, K. Polymath, what do you have to say about this point about the law? Okay, following the law, but hey, not in a democracy.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop down now. Thanks for and listen from the cloud or
The
whatever.
clouds.
All right.
All right, man.
All right.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. So the law may have some morality ingrained in it, but not through democracy. Actually, when I used to study law, this was one of the points that we did actually discuss, is that morality is ingrained in aspects of natural law. Shout out to Mr. Uganda. He mentioned that if you consume too much alcohol, that's when it becomes wrong, because you're now going against nature. So I would say, yeah, I agree with that. So
all right, Thomas Aquinas, go ahead.
yeah, I do think there's an aspect of nature, like understanding nature and actually accepting nature and respecting nature. So, for example, if you're going to go out there and follow a law, if that law is within nature, it's not so bad, right? An example is age of consent. If you follow nature, you would realize that the age that most countries have is fine, because it has a natural aspect to it in order to protect the individual, the body, and the self. And let's say an 18-year-old makes sense, because guess what? If you follow science will tell you, like neuroscience, a brain doesn't get developed until the age of 25. So are you going to make the legal age of monkey double backflips 25? No, that's ridiculous. That's not nature. Nature is around 18-ish, or it's depending on countries, 2 years down or up, whatever. That's now following natural law. So then that, of course, makes sense with the logic. So yeah, I do actually think that nature aspect brings an interesting aspect to it. Now, in a more tyrannical kind of government system, which everything is kind of predetermined by some all-powerful being, yes, that makes perfect sense, since it is by definition good if you follow that path. But if it's a democratic state, of course, it's just going to be arbitrary and contradictory. But still, I would only kind of follow if the all-powerful being is good in on itself, because it could also just be some random tyrannical being, which is ordered but wrong.
Ordered but wrong. Going to your whole and let me see. You can hear me, right?
Yes. No.
Let me see. Because I think my headphones are doing something weird. Bluetooth connected, it says, but okay. Yeah, I think now I hear you from the headphones. So, natural law. Natural law. It was inevitably going to come up. Natural law. Can we. Natural law is one of those kinds of. I have a certain kind of aversion to it, may be the best
Because you
we
can't
have.
define it. Or-
It's like evolution. It's the answer to everything. You know what I mean? It is. Oh, it's like, hey, it is natural law. You see how it flows along with the thing, and everything goes along into harmony. It's natural harmony, you know. And it's my rebellious side wants to say, and it's not just pure rebellion. It's more like my side that knows that we're filled with error, my side that knows that we're prone to telling stories that are just so stories to fit certain things, wants to say, well, I'm sure that nature is filled with all kinds of crazy disorder as well, and things that emerge kind of naturally and go with the ways of, the whole St. Thomas Aquinas flow is very flow, and it's flowy and orderly, but um can we put up, a reasonable, can we steel man an opposition to natural law a little bit, right? Or is that a foolhardy project?
Sorry, can you repeat that last question, please?
Can we go against natural law and say, maybe we start at a low level way, by because in a low level way one could
No, you
say,
can't go against it because the law itself, if it's a law, then it's going to be the thing that
oh,
sort of
okay,
is
law, I get
imbued
it.
with order,
The
logic, and
words, okay.
energy minimum, right? Like it's going to be the least entropic
Okay,
state, or at least,
so there's something
right?
natural, therefore, about the fact that you would never have a perfect society, right?
Mm.
Is that a
Yes,
proposition of natural law then?
of course, because a perfect
Of
society
course.
is an
Yeah.
entropy level zero, which
Hmm.
means nothing's happening, right?
Exactly.
It's
Okay.
a zero energy state circumstance, and that's not what we want. We want something that's dynamic within a reasonable kind of play which we can enjoy.
Exactly. So we want something that is dynamic within reason.
Mm.
That is the problem, right? Because if the crazy psychopath comes in and says, "Oh, I'm going to give you what you want," and you go, "Oh, but within reason," and then he's like, "Whence comes this within reason you're talking about? We want, okay. Therefore, there is a yardstick. There's something you're saying. Okay, we don't want it to be zero. We want something to be happening. We want some disturbance. We don't want Plato's Republic where Socrates and the rest of his boring friends could just have barley and water and be very healthy, okay, and sit doing mathematics all day. We're like, no, we want a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and the crazy David over there that, does weird things from time to time, to kind of shake up the picture a little bit. But we don't want to shake it up too far. What's this yardstick with which we're measuring? Because internally, okay, one can say it's just we regulate. It's almost like homeostasis, right? Where it's like, we kind of know when it's a little too, when we've gone too far. The fight flight responses, those kinds of things. Oh, now I'm a little uncomfortable. And then if you average that over the population, this is basically the yardstick that we're using. Are we back to just a biological yardstick again?
It's always going to be biological, and the logic here is the
Ah,
chocolate uh, fallacy. It's that even if, let's say, there's a problem of evil, right? If God is all good and all powerful and all knowing, why does evil, or rather, no, why does evil that is unnecessary exist? And an unnecessary evil is, why is there a species uh, of an animal like some kind of bug, invasive species that grows only on the eye of a human, right? So, and of course, some kids have this bug in their eye, right, eating away through their cornea. So this is the kind of unnecessary evil, right? There's nothing you can learn from that you can't learn from something else, etc. If you talk about soul development, there's plenty of other things to teach you whatever lesson that's going to teach you. So one could argue, it's like, if God is all good, all knowing, and all powerful, why does He allow such a tragedy to exist? And one argues here is that humans are created in a way that they have this biological yardstick, as you like to call it, where even if there is no so-called suffering as we would define it, the only suffering in this world is that some people don't have access to chocolate bars. That is the greatest evil. Guess what? We would still have the same feeling of evil, or, like, this is the worst possible situation in that world. Today isn't a perfect example. We're in a situation, at least in the West, where we live, we got food, we got housing, we've got pretty much good health relative to any other time in a collective historical perspective. Yet we have the left and the right. We have people crying, saying this is the most racist country in the world that you come from, which is ridiculous. Some people are saying that this is the worst of that and this, when it's actually the best of all those things. People keep saying things like culture is getting worse. How can it be getting worse when crime rate is the lowest that it's ever been in the last 50 years or so? So there's so much things like this where we're feeling through our kind of restricted yardstick, and our bodies, our brains is regulating within that region. So ultimately, we're designed to never be satisfied, and that dissatisfaction is what allows us to move forward.
The dissatisfaction allows us to move forward. The dissatisfaction also allows for the meaning, right?
Yes.
Am I wrong there? Shout out to Jordan Peterson. And
Sure.
we did put his name on this video after all, didn't we?
I mean,
you
D
have to,
said,
suffering.
D says,
Go ahead.
"Oh, Polly, he clearly hasn't suffered enough yet, or given birth low." Well, women suffer more by giving a piece of themselves in a very dangerous thing that they might die. That's why they have to be selective. Shout out to Jordan Peterson. Yeah, he's
Indeed. So, good old Jordan and the dissatisfaction leading you to pick up the cross and go up the hill so that you find meaning in it. The dissatisfaction is a necessary part of that equation. However, it actually, and here's my point, and I hope you would let me know if I'm missing the mark here, that dissatisfaction is not the only ingredient, okay? And moving forward with that dissatisfaction is not the only ingredient. I would add something which I call consciousness, which means just what you think it is, which is awareness. That you have to be aware of the dissatisfaction, okay? And not run away from it via other means by which you would, let's say, you wake up and there's a little bit of perturbation, there's a little bit of offness in your day to day. You could run and go, you could run to Heisenberg, right, and give you a shot, right? And then you can still go to work and, work through stuff and still move forward in your life, but you're always medicated, okay? You're not facing this is my existentialist side now, right? I'm like, you're not really facing what's wrong with being medicated is that it dims that awareness of the suffering, which then robs you of the meaning. So goes the very broad strokes way of putting that. But if I'll leave it at the broad strokes, and then let's see if you can dig into it a little bit.
But here's the thing. What if you have been through the meaning? What if your soul has gone through the fire?
You're done,
and now you're like,
I got the message.
I got the message.
For Heisenberg.
Right. So you've gone through it. You've rescued your father from the belly of the whale. Now you're saying, you know what? I want to go and be high every day. And you know what? I have enough money to live all my life. I'm okay with if I got any disease from this because guess what? There's so much chaos that I don't really care. As long as I live my life happily and peacefully every day, what's wrong with that? They already experienced the meaning. So now now they're seeking the non-meaning. Perhaps now they're seeking just floating.
Can you read what Dr. Thunder has to say there? Shout out, shout out, shout out to Dr. Thunder. Thank you very much for the super chat. I believe that's a $5 color.
It does have a dollar sign on it. Another abstraction. What words or expressions are inappropriate or wrong? Cause words from a biblical perspective, particular words not listed.
Cuss words, I believe.
Oh, cuss
Is it?
words. Oh, okay, not cuss word. Okay, that makes more sense.
You were racking your brain there, like, whoa, what did you just?
I was
That was a
like,
curveball.
is he is he becoming British? I was like, cut. That's an
Okay,
interesting point.
okay,
So,
go ahead.
cuss words. So, cuss words, it's a curse, right? A curse is something that is actually supposed to affect you, and the words carrying energy is supposed to be able to. It's basically witchcraft, right? According to the Bible, we could abstract that a curse word, if used negatively on someone, is witchcraft. Is you're putting a spell on them and you're cursing them, basically. That's why the curse word aspect exists. And if you do that, then I believe cursing people is wrong in the Bible. You're not supposed to curse people in general. But at the same time, I think you can pray for people's disaster. So I'm not so sure where the fine line is between praying for the
Oh
destruction
yeah,
of your enemies versus cursing your enemies. Is it one
oh yeah. I
through
mean,
the
look,
fact that you're praying
many
through the right
things that
channels?
are in the Bible are not necessarily prescriptions. I don't, and this is. Am I coming through there? Because especially many things in the Bible, especially Old Testament type stuff, were never written as prescriptions, right? It's like, well, he did this and then he did that and then he did this and then he did that. Doesn't mean you should do those things. Doesn't mean you should try to marry her and her sister, right? That kind of thing, right? It happened, okay? So
Right.
go ahead.
That's a good point.
So
That's a good point.
there are
Very
lots
good.
of things there that are kind of natural to us, and again, we've already said that it is not possible nor desirable to us to actually have this perfection. We don't want it. We don't want it. We do not want the perfection, right? So just
Mm.
because, and shout out to Jordan Peterson again, and that's why he says the difference between ideology and real good mythopoetic religious mythology is that the real good stuff shows you everything. Ideology just paints some kind of, oh yeah, and then the sickle and the arm, and then we shall, The real good stuff shows you that David is going to be looking at whatever and killing
All
the guy to
right.
get the peace leaf, and
Yeah,
that's just what it is.
that's a very good
That's
point.
what it
And
is.
yeah, it's a very good point actually. Yeah, like Samson, he finds a woman who, for some reason, he likes all these, all these Cushites, right? He's out here, doesn't want to marry another Jew for some reason. Doesn't look so good. Maybe their nose is too big. Who knows? He finds this beautiful African woman out there. It's like, hey, she's looking good, and he goes out there. He sleeps with her. She tries to trick him to give him the secrets of his power, yet he still gives it away. And the thing is, right, if you read it, the story, you think this is ridiculous. Why would someone do that? And the thing is, this is a story of human nature. This happens every day. There's so many simps that time and time again do the same exact thing, knowing the consequences of the action. And I can give many simps of today. Men who get married, knowing the statistics of divorce is 50%, and they wear glasses and suits and they go happily getting married, you know, knowing that they're going to be destroyed in that process. The absurdity
All
is
right,
actually perfect because
all right, all right, all right. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Yes, we do. Okay, you mentioned about the suffering thing, and I would like to acknowledge upfrontly, right? That yes, this is that equation that I mentioned about you needing the suffering undisturbed, right? Clear window, looking at it. Don't run to Heisenberg to give you a shot of Gogurt or alcohol or meth so that you don't see the suffering, because then you're not going to get the meaning out of life. That you need to go through that day that was a rough day and then get to the end of the day with a clear eye. And then two things happen. Number one, you get the meaning. Number two, you get to know yourself a little bit more, right? Because
Yeah.
the idea is there's a skill to actually rising above, again, master your subjective consciousness, right? There's a skill to actually rising and facing the shall we say, the existential angst, to put it in the most fundamental way, right?
Hmm.
There is a skill to being self-aware, to seeing yourself in the midst of knowledge of your death and the very fact that the life is just scary as hell, right?
Hmm.
And to really relish that, feel it in the cells of your body, right? That makes you actually, from a now consequentialist pragmatic point of view, better performer. Okay.
Hmm.
So I'm saying that after you do that, after you get that skill and know, you measure it out, you're like, okay, cool, I've gotten that much. Then you can be like there's someone in the chat that's called, never hungry again. Then you can be like,
Okay.
I'm not. I've been hungry. I've learned my lesson. Now it's lobsters and steaks. Okay, I got that message. I learned the skills from being hungry. And for me, I would say basically what you want is range.
Hmm.
What do I mean by that? You want to be able to fall down as low as possible, back to being hungry again, even though that's not what you want to do,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you want to be able to, you want to constantly be increasing that range. Okay, you're not going to be on purpose going back to being hungry, but maybe as a means of discipline you can do some fasting. After all, isn't that what fasting is, right?
Hmm.
Fasting and abstaining from things so that you can
Right.
go back to that place where you have a clear window into suffering and deprivation and whatever it may be, so that you can skill up, because that range gives you a whole lot more settledness rather than the need to be on Heisenberg's crutch the whole time. So
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't know if any thoughts on that.
yeah. I mean, so in regards to the range, you want to be able to invoke it at will, right? So think of it like a
Mhm.
game. You've already been through a certain map. You can go to that map whenever you want by clicking return whatever function. So what that means is, let's say you've been at the bottom of hell. You've seen how people are hungry in hell. The thing is, now that you experience a small perturbation, maybe your favorite restaurant, $200 meal is not ready, or your name wasn't saved properly onto the list, you can kind of think back and be like, okay, I remember like 2 years ago, I was eating Indomie noodles in my shared apartment. At least I'm not there. So it allows you to immediately see perspective and then be immediately be put in a place of power again. You're not in that turmoil of resentment or disinterest for a time that you don't want to be in. So it gives you that freedom and power to basically, yeah, to be free to
Mhm.
decide
Okay, good.
how
So
and
you
or if you
say,
want to suffer.
and we'll take. Well, I'm going to segue to your agency thing here, because I think that it naturally arises, right? It's because you're as you. I said range, and you put some more dimensions into it. It's like, it's not just. It's, I want to be able to move, and the comment here alludes to that in the sense that, shout out to Buddha, desire and also aversion. Okay, it's not just desire. It's anything that is pulling you to it, or anything from which you're like, not that. That takes away your agency. That takes away your power. That takes away your range. Hence, it's the addiction to food that you want to be like. So if you see the food and the food is like, oh, you gotta go get it. You want to be like, hey, food, calm down. I'm gonna fast for a week. I'm going to show you who's boss. Hey, 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 whatever else it may be, calm down. I'm going to abstain from you. I'm going to show you who is boss. That is the basic whole suffering gives you meaning to flesh it out more. But this dovetails to agency, does it not? Would you mind picking it up from there and why agency perhaps seems to be one of your main things in the sense that you talk about consent and so on? Is that one of
Yeah,
your
so
sacred cows, if you will?
actually, my morality is I have my own moral, logic that I use, and it's mostly based on agency, mostly based on consent. If someone consents to something, or rather, if I consent to something, I think you should allow me to do that thing if that thing does not infringe on any immediate, um, well-being of somebody else in my vicinity. So therefore, agency is extremely important to me. And the interesting thing here is that if someone is if someone is self-aware, someone who understands themselves enough relative to other people, again, because there is no absolute self-awareness, right? That is when you can more or less, uh, you know, interpret in real time your dreams and your subconscious. That's not really something that's going to happen anytime soon. So no, I'm not going to go down a absolute self-awareness perspective. I'll put it relative to other people and relative to self. The point here is I do think agency is really important because as you go through that journey with self, knowing your boundaries, boundary limits of what you desire, how that desire can affect your mental health, how that mental health can define your physical standing and physical health. When you put all that there together, then you kind of project this is what I value. For example, let's say I can tell you right now, I value living a decent length life up to 75 with a decent health in that life. I can actually then create a circumstance where I can be high every other day, right? So I can still be, conscious and experiencing the suffering in between and reality, and then I can be in my dream state every other day, and I can then kind of, again, statistically speaking, because nothing is guaranteed, either way, then you can kind of mold the kind of universe that you seek, relative to what you seek.
Yes. And I think that's why I brought up the whole barley and water thing, right?
Mm.
Because some people are like, oh, he wants to get high. It's like, look, and barley and water is an extreme, but the degree to which you indulge in anything, you are going and getting high, right? You are riding or running away into some kind of a thing that for which you have desire, or running away from something from which you have an aversion. You are engaging in this robbing yourself of meaning. Okay, but the point is, every once in a while, you got to know that, and then go to some barley and water. Okay, metaphorically, of course. Back to the cuss word thing. You see, you said witchcraft, which is a spiritual thing, a consciousness thing. Words are, after all, a big part of the human consciousness. Okay? There is a pre verbal stage to things, if you will, mainly in the unconscious, right? It's rather symbolic and strange from the word perspective. Okay? But then we have a lot of ability to we do have the ability to even affect that though with words, right? But if I'm throwing out cuss words, it's all within a context, right? In the sense that, first of all, if you don't understand the language, then it doesn't mean anything. And then if you understand the language, but to you never had a context that it was a bad thing, then it's not going to quote unquote carry that energy that you say it has, right? Or do you think that I can actually cuss you and curse you with something that you don't even understand? How wooed are you with this?
Okay, so first let's demystify that woo example. I mean, cursing me with something that I don't understand is fine if I understand that you're trying to curse me. That will still work, right?
Yes.
So it's
Okay.
buying into the logic. It's like, let's say, we can move into, hookers in Nigeria, Ghana, so and some parts of the Middle East, the so-called Middle East, Northeast Africa. Anyways, if if there is a trafficking, now this is now a non-agency, so this is 100% wrong. When you travel, oh my god, oh myself, I mean. Anyways, so when you want to traffic people without them giving you their consent, it's 100% evil and wrong at every circumstance. Uh, so in Nigeria and Ghana, and parts of some Bedouin tribes in uh, West Asia, so hence Northeast Africa, what happens is that they take these women, usually women, to these priests, these witches, witch doctors, or whatever you want to call them, this medicine men and women with spiritual affairs. So what they do is they kind of make them have a spiritual sex with them. So they do a ritual where basically the woman acknowledges that she's going to be a slave until she pays back the money that she owes this gang that's going to traffic her into Europe, like Italy, Spain, those sort of countries. Now, what happens is this woman truly believes that if she runs away, tells the CIA or whatever, like Interpol or anyone else trying to rescue her, she's gonna have terrible things befalling her, spiritual battles. Her son's left toe is gonna fall off, you know, or someone's gonna die from cancer or some heart attack. And the funny thing is, obviously, these things begin to happen, especially at the kind of age that she might be at 33. Her friends are going to start dying, etc. All that kind of stuff, diseases found out. So, of course, the moment she sees one of these signs, it then kind of opens her eyes, and everything else that she sees is related to it. So now she becomes engrossed in it. Whether she believed it or not doesn't matter, because there's a culture around her in this particular country, let's say Ghana, that believe in witchcraft. So she's stuck there. Now, and this is independent whether witchcraft is real or not. That's not even the purpose of this conversation. It's
Okay. To the degree to which we are all, shall we say, centers of the universe, in the sense that we do exist from the first person perspective, and I know that we're very much engrossed right now talking about a collective zeitgeist, right? Collective consciousness and such. But if you buy a Hyundai, guess what? You're gonna start seeing Hyundais everywhere. Am I right, Polymath?
if I meet someone in the street, I'm gonna start seeing him everywhere. If I make that contact and awareness that this person is this person, I see them everywhere. Yeah,
that's the thing. So whether if since we actually do live from first person perspective, that is our world, and we know this very simple example that I gave, which is you buy a Honda or a Hyundai or a Jeep, and all of a sudden you're seeing Jeeps everywhere. Okay, that's what it's all about. Okay, when you've been cursed and that you kind of know that kind of a thing, you're gonna start seeing it, and guess what? Then begins the loop, right? Because it doesn't stop there. Okay, it's actually then gonna start having physical manifestations in how you act. Well, first of all, it's going to disturb you, right? You're going to disturb your center, okay? But then you're going to start acting in certain ways and doing certain other things and blocking, blah, 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 okay? That will mess you up, okay? So 100% on the cuss word thing. And you mentioned something about Ghana, and you see the rights after a woman's husband dies comes to mind, because we're talking again about the sanctity of these particular kinds of relationship, passing on the genes, the streetwalker messing up that whole situation for the order, right? And then people not wanting to raise other people's children and so on and so forth, that the genes doesn't want to do that. And the genes actually, you want to not just put it out there and know that it's yours, but you want to guide it as well. Okay. But okay, the woman in Ghana, certain parts of Ghana, right, they're not allowed to remarry, okay, for a year. Okay. They have to wear black for that year. Okay. It is believed that they go and they ask the husband what happened, how he died. Okay. And then there's a final ritual that's done at the end of the year to make sure that all those things work out. And then now you can go. Now, why do you think that situation is there? And do you think it actually works for the purpose for which it was instituted?
Yeah, why is it there? I mean, okay, there's a few reasons that come to mind. One of them is that, hey, look, we know that some women might go and want to go kill their husbands, right? So this is a nice way to kind of prevent that from happening at any mass way, because guess what? This checks the spirit is going to be asked how it died, right? The woman's going to fear this stuff, right? If she knows that she put poison in his food, but then again, with the spirit know that the food is poisoned, that's now when logic comes in. It's like, obviously if you stab the guy, maybe they'll figure it out that, hey, my wife killed me. But you know, but if if he poisoned them, would the spirit realize that he got poisoned? I guess maybe if he's lingering around and she's celebrating, she's like, yeah, we ain't family. Ain't no nigga gonna be touching me. Yeah, okay. If she's
So
singing that song, I'll say,
let me while you say this, because I think it's kind of obvious the reason why it's there, right? And we mentioned earlier that the woman is going to be thinking in the back of her head, like, is this curse going to actually work on me? And by the way, I'm not allowed to go cavorting with Tyrone that I wanted to go cavort with. That's why I killed my husband, right?
mhm.
For a year, which is a long time, and all that kind of stuff. And people are watching you during that time, and all that kind of stuff. However, Mr. Uganda gave shall we say, we call that the trivial answer. The trivial answer is the obvious answer, which is, well, why is it the proximal cause? Maybe it's not quite related to. Is it related to the proximal cause?
Proximal
The
cause.
pizza
What did you
arrived because
say?
why did the pizza arrive? Well, because the pizza guy brought it to my door. Why is there this particular superstition? Was because it's part of the culture. It's the superstition, that kind of a thing. So
Hmm.
he gave that answer, and I want to say something about that answer, in the sense that we gave a logic to it, okay,
Hmm.
and I naturally go there anyways. I always go a few steps above the first proximal cause, and I give a logic to things, even though I know that the individuals, may not be thinking this way,
Hmm.
right?
But the
The
chief may have.
individuals, pardon me.
The chief may have, or the seance, the
Exactly.
village
Shout out to
shaman.
Dr. Thunder and his Philosopher King Ideal Society. Those people may know, especially the shamanistic type of people, the crazy weirdo intuitives out there that tend to know things. Or not that they're very special. It's just that they think in those ways, right? And
Hmm.
we talked about the pre-verbal ways of knowing. Here's my point: logic does not only exist in your brain and in your head. I'm not making this is not a proposition. This is a question. Or why should we not assume that there is an emergent logic coming out of in other words, maybe nobody really quite knows why this thing came about, right?
It's called the
But some people
zeitgeist,
have
though.
inklings. Yeah, some people have the inkling of, you can imagine over millennia, right? Like, I had a dream about something, and I think that we have to keep the woman waiting for a while, okay? And then somebody else, and those kinds of things. Over time, it just kind of comes to be. It is a Western materialist scientific bias and prejudice of ours to think, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Somebody has to have sat down and thought about it. Well, why do you think that logic only resides in you and it's nowhere else in the universe, right? You know what I mean? It's like we have this kind of very, shall we say, individualistic, to bastardize it by using that silly word, way of looking at the logos, at the cosmos,
Right.
right?
Okay,
If
so
there
the
is
origin.
order in the cosmos, then there is order. Go ahead.
Yeah, the origin may be actually, as you said, like more of an emergent thing just from the chaos, right? However, the survival of it would have had to have been based on evidence or some form of consequence. So, meaning that they would have said, interesting. So, this culture here has actually been, people find logic for it afterwards and it seems to make sense. So, they maintain it. People begin to realize, interesting. So this is why the divorce rate in Nigeria and Ghana is 0.5% in Nigeria, and maybe 5% also in Ghana, but in some other uncouth country it's like 40%.
100%. 100%. Now, and Mr. Uganda just mentioned something again about that about the TV thing, and this is something that stubborn folks like us, by us I mean me, the royal us, we
Interesting. I don't have a couch in my house. I don't have a TV.
that kind of a thing. Like, so for me, it has forever been like like I didn't read a book. And I'm sure you probably share the same kind of similar traits where I've always just questioned things, and I've always been disgusted. Okay, here comes my FI again. I'm quite disgusted with humanity and and their freaking mediocrity. Okay, in the sense that as a kid growing up, when you question these things, people just give you stupid answers. Like they're just dumb. They're just like, but that's the way it is. Who does that? How can you do that? How can you say that? And you want to literally chop their head off. I swear. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm talking about growing up. And that's why the feelings are so strong, because at that time, you don't have the choice as to who you can be around, right? You don't have the
Right. You're
choice as to who
limited.
yeah. You're just there with these freaking idiots, and you question something and they just act as though like, oh my God, like you're crazy and you're why do you have that couch there watching that TV? Isn't that a fair question? But
Yeah.
no, these freaking idiots out there. But anyways, go ahead.
Well, in Nairobi, the women especially, they don't like answering questions, and they've evolved that. Who does that? Or what? Question two, Hivo two. Hivo two means just like that. You ask them a question and they say just like that. It just is. That's a so yeah. Yeah. So if their kid is a adventurous kid like you, like me, Ike out there asking, so why is it that we wash our hands before eating every meal? By the way, this is something that I've noticed here, right? Everyone here washes their hands before eating. I get it; they eat with their hands, right? But still,
Mhm.
even if I eat with my hands, I'm not gonna wash my hands majority of the time, you know. But I asked them that, and they're like, they just they just tell me Hivo too, as in it's just like that. Sure, some of them will give you a reason, or it's cleanliness and all that stuff. But I asked them why. They can't. They don't like to answer questions three wives removed ever. Not just
Now,
like perpetually, just at any instance.
so people are a lot of people, and then we go back to that whole. You have to. This is why I think being friends with the moment, which is filled with existential angst and craziness, is relevant. Why? Because the reason people don't want to ask why is because it brings them too close to reality, right? Which is again, in other words, you don't have to go take drugs or eat cake to hide from reality. You could just hide from reality right there in plain sight in the cocoon of other idiots, right? That you're with, not asking the why. Because when you ask the why to three whys removed, as you said, you're going to all the veils of the crap is going to be removed, and boom, there you are, right there and faced with the cosmos, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want that. And I'm over here saying, oh, it's robbing them of their meaning, and they're not really going to get meaning unless they get to that point, and so on and so forth. Um, Now, I know that perhaps, unless one believes in some kind of crazy hierarchical ways of being, like, okay, am I not just, waving my hands in the wind as to that they don't have meaning or such? In other words, they're missing something. What am I missing? What am I missing by not being in that cocoon of we shield ourselves from why by just saying it's the way it is. You say that's it, the way it is, and you tell me that's how it is, and I will continue to tell you how this is how it is. That's the pact. Am I missing something? Right? What am I missing? What is the experience that I'm not getting as a reason? I'm saying they're not getting an experience, and I can argue that point. We've been talking around that point. I'm saying they're missing something, but I too must be missing something because I'm not in there in that room with them. What's in that room? There must be something in there, right? What's in your room? Have you fallen and you couldn't hear what I'm saying?
Have I fallen? What's in their room? Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think generally what's in their room is that, well, it's many things. One thing is that the room is ignorance and bliss. So that's now the issue, because every time you ask them questions, you perturb their ego, their sense of self,
Okay, so it's
their
just the whole
understanding.
Matrix again, and it's okay. It's the Matrix. I'm over here outside, like, hey, you gotta take the red pill, man. And deal with the fact that there is no, you're just out here suspended in the middle of nothing, and you got why, constantly wanting to like dissolve everything, and they're just like, hey, take the blue pill and eat the steak, right? And it's
Yep.
blissful. Now, the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated, as I say in my song. My preferred state, and this is why I'm trying to get to this, because I always like to, I don't like deceiving myself, right? It's just a question of preferred states. My
Yes, honest.
preferred state is to be in that turbulent, uh, outside the matrix state. Obviously, there's no perfect self awareness. We know that, right? It's all relative to other people. Okay, we're not we're not deceiving ourselves. Um, but their preferred state is to be in there, and who's to question that, right? Who's to question it? Why
Yep.
am I now? I'm free to be disgusted by it, and I'm thoroughly disgusted by it. Okay, that silly room they're in. Okay, but
But you
I still
see,
know that it's just a
yeah.
preference.
Yeah, I mean, we can even logicize it why it's just a preferences. Think of it this way, right? So perhaps we might say that we want to go through life with the, highest level of acceptance of truth itself, and suffering, within the highest purity of refinement. But the truth is, none of us here want to suffer with the absolute suffering. Like none of us want to be feeling like we're scorching heat every moment of our existence with our disfigured faces at every moment and still have to interact with other people. None of us here want to be able to be going through some of these worst experiences. We want to have that again, that yardstick. We just want it to be higher than the rest of them. We want to look down at them and say, hey, you guys are disgusting over there with your small yardstick. Why don't you come up here where we're slightly higher? But in reality, we don't want to be at the highest because we still want to exist and experience something good. So ultimately, we are our own hypocrites. It's just we're hypocrites at a slightly higher fence, looking down at the ones who decide to live on the lower fence, where it's more
Okay,
safe.
let me challenge you now. We're going to start landing the plane. I'm going to challenge you to perform a task. You probably already
Okay.
know what I'm going to ask you to do. Let me ask you, what do you think I'm going to ask you to do?
What are you gonna ask me to do? Uh,
Hmm.
that's a good question. You could perhaps Steelman, the other way, or what is it?
Oh, okay, now I'm just asking you to do some NI. I'm asking you
Okay.
to gather up certain
Oh, that's
things.
tough.
Doesn't have to be a very clean job. You don't have to
Mhm.
make a very, tidy dissertation about it, but do some NI, if you will. About
Okay.
again, I'm already tempted to start. No, I'm not going to say anything. Go ahead.
Uh, in relation to what specifically, or which specifically?
Interesting. Look, we've only been talking about one thing, which is morality.
Okay.
Okay. You see, you're tempting me to go to do it. There's even a topic. You have a picture behind you and all that kind of stuff. You could pick. You could start and just
Okay.
any backwards.
Well, morality. I think we didn't really go too deep into sort of the solipsistic aspect of morality too much. I think we kind of kept it both object oriented and person oriented. And I think ultimately we did talk about the line between the the externally prescribed aspects that link to morality, such as society, the rules of engagement in society, such as marriage, and how that can be perturbed by a street urchin. We also kind of went down into thinking about Heisenberg, how he might actually be worse because of the quantification aspect, the fact that he can affect far more lives. But then at the same time, we can't be too stuck in the matrix thinking that Heisenberg is sin itself when we have Pfizer, Smith, Klein, as well as, Moderna out here selling drugs that are affecting us. For example, Ritalin to kids. I mean, that's just crack derivative to kids, but it is safe according to the FDA, whatever that means, right? So we can't go around calling Heisenberg some evil boss Todd, and then we're not going to do the same thing for these other conglomerates, etc. Now, when it comes to kind of putting in the morality of the agency, it's quite important for agency to kind of play into this, because the individual is at different levels of development with different understandings of preferences. If you go and try to give a friend a good time by being around him, telling him, let's go to this hotel that you haven't asked him whether he wants to, but it's the most expensive hotel, and not quite giving him agency to choose which hotel he prefers, you're already perturbing his own, internal order. The entropy is beginning to be perturbed because you're not quite engaging with the nuances of what's inside this person's mind and soul, because you don't quite know the narrative, the storyville inside of his mind. So agency is quite important to be able to truly decipher morality, because the individual would have gone through very unique circumstances with self in the years of development that they have then garnered very unique ways of dealing with situations, scenarios, and all of that. Then we finally land and say, hey, these people, some of them are stuck in the matrix. And then we say, hey, we are also stuck in our own storyville and a matrix of our own making. Can we escape it? Who knows?
Ah, look at you. You see how nice, you see how, how nice that is? Oh, good job. Good job. I'm not going to do anything. Yeah, I'm not going to add to that at all, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe next time we will go in the solipsistic direction, as you said. What the hell?
She tells you to
I'm not
pray.
belittling you. He tells you to pray, and then she criticizes your prayers
by praying even longer.
Oh, she's like, okay, pray for us, and then you pray, and then she's like, oh yeah, and then she corrects. She's like, God, yeah. She corrects your prayer.
She's like, oh, you missed that out. You missed that. You didn't pray for last week's.
God.
Yes,
that's funny.
My son.
That's that is funny. The solipsistic direction, generally speaking, it will be a challenge to have a public conversation about that. Because an honest one.
Yeah. Yeah. Audra states the closest thing that I have to an actual answer is that the truth is good / has value. So morality derives from there. 100%. Maybe one day we can go down that path. The truth and good, but it might be confusing for some people.
All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Young man, do you want to succeed, to expand beyond your horizons? If you want to be free, then you must learn to master yourself, your thoughts, feelings, your body and spirit. Master your subjective consciousness. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. The world outside of yourself is ruled by those who are not ruled by their base instincts. Young man, go forth into the world after this. Meditate, contemplate, then plan and execute an action towards success. Take a risk, break the rules, and be disciplined within self.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.